It's just getting to know you. Who is your favorite saint?
Blessed Solanus Casey.
Oh, no hesitation. I love it.
If you ever see any of my feed, I talk about him a lot. But that's because my grandparents, both sides of the family, knew him in some way. And my grandmother, my mom's side, she lived across the street from the monastery when she was a young child. So she used to go over, she'd be like 5 or 6, and she'd go over and say hello to him. So yeah, there's a deep connection within the family for him. And he's been featured, he's the only cause for sainthood that's been featured in 2 seasons of my project.
Okay.
I've had his picture in both season 18 and 20.
Wow. Okay, so let's catch our fans up. I'm sitting here chatting with John Kraemer. He is with the Lego Project, and this is our normal Our Blooming Catholic Life, but it's been forever since we've had a guest on, and we're talking, we'll get to the Lego Project in a minute. We're doing our little cup of icebreakers right now. And I did not expect, like, I follow John on social media. And do you go by John or JM?
I go by both, although, there's a little story on that. Is for a while, I was doing some writings and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and on Facebook, everyone knows me as JM, but for all the media purposes, I go by John.
Okay.
So yeah, either one works. I've had people call me Jim, James. I've had people, I've done displays where people come, hey, Jim. But
well, that's just JM, fine. Yeah, they're just making a word.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fine.
Okay. And so I found you on Twitter is how I found out about you. And I can't explain that you just showed up in my Twitter feed. So I've been following the Lego Project a little bit. And so, yeah, we're just getting to know you a little bit. I'll pull out something else from the cup. You're allowed like 1 pass. We do 3 of these. You are allowed 1 pass. Okay, this one came up. This is probably an easy one. A favorite hymn.
Several, actually.
Okay.
I think the probably going to create a firestorm, but I do like Gather Us In. Mainly from the fact, from a perspective of singing it. I'm a choir person, so it is a very easy and very fun song to sing. So yeah, I'm going to catch fire, but oh well.
I know. I'm thinking like Twitter could be all over some of these questions. They're kind of loaded, but
I'm pretty open about how I feel about certain things.
Yeah.
Highly opinionated.
Yeah. Now see, like a song like Gather Us In, I don't always like at a mass, but at a prayer service or, fellowship gathering, it rocks. Like, so I can make the argument. Sometimes I like hymns. I just like them for different settings.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and then just because we're apparently stuck on favorite, I mean, I swear there's a bunch in here, but I'm only getting favorites. So here's the third one. See if you like it. Favorite liturgical season.
Oh, for me, probably Christmas. The entire build-up, all the way up to Christmas season, is probably, for me personally, one of my favorite times. But and actually, it's kind of related to the project.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Even in the chaos of the pandemic, see, I do a Christmas display every year.
Oh, I see. I never even realized you did it.
At my home parish, Christ the Good Shepherd here in Saginaw, Michigan, which I've been doing uninterrupted since 2003.
Oh, wow.
Even during this pandemic, they still allowed me to bring the project out, and I still had a socially distanced display, and it worked beautifully.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, I haven't seen those pictures. I'm assuming they're on Facebook. Want me to, I can't do it right now, but for the video purposes, maybe I can go out and grab them and do a little montage.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So then, in honor of that, we're going to assume I'm going to put that montage here. I'm going to show you, I went down to the basement just to get this. I'm a Lego teacher. I did taught Lego science for a long time. This was my attempt at Redwall.
Oh, wow. That's actually not bad.
And I must have been going, I went back on, where did I even get pictures? But I couldn't even find Redwall. But when I was teaching, all the kids were watching. But now I realize there's schematics inside the book. That must be, because there's some little rooms in here. Like I started, but now that I've seen your Lego project, I mean, maybe they are making these pink bricks again, and maybe I could pull it off. I don't know.
You'd be surprised. There's so many different color variations right now. I just use some of the primary ones because they're easy to come by.
Yeah.
Like the standard red, and I use mainly red and blue for my walls, just because it's the easiest. And plus, red kind of reminds me of the red brick of our church that we have.
Okay. I hadn't even really thought about that. Yeah, that one, they came out with that pink colored brick or rose colored brick that year. And I was just like, Redwall. All my students were reading, there's like 20 books there or something. Everybody was reading them. So it was a natural thing for people.
Oh, wow.
Just thought I'd get you to crack up at that. I also don't know why there's money in it. I'm assuming Lego Joker was hiding some stuff in there.
Actually, I think those Lego money pieces have been around for a long time, even for the Batman sets.
Yeah, I just suspect that that's where they came from, because the boys had a lot of Lego, because it definitely wasn't from Star Wars, which is fun. And then Bionicle was a huge one for my guys, but
never got into that one.
It's so much of an open creativity. They got into making their own animals and whatnot, so. But that's definitely.
It's led to some rather interesting builds. I've seen some Bionicle style, kind of those influencing of those action figures. In fact, I was just scanning some up on a couple of Lego blogs that I follow. Some rather creative builders out there.
Yeah, and I can almost imagine using them as decorative elements. You could probably make like a baptismal font out of one of the Bow Rock big curved pieces and stuff.
I've done some rather interesting things with the baptismal font. Although this year I basically kind of reused what I had done before just because it was available. And I tend to reuse elements from previous seasons that I've included, like the tables, the ambo, stuff like that. Stuff that I'll make some changes here and there when needed, but for the most part, if it works, might as well use it.
Right. So did you ever buy like the Father Leopold or the Father John sets, or do your own?
Well, actually what happened was I had actually sent the company an email inquiry of what it would actually cost to actually get the custom elements from that. Because I wanted to get my hands on it, but didn't want to spend the $50 for Lego parts that I could easily get elsewhere.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I got an email alert saying your package is on its way.
Whoa.
How did I don't think I remember sending them my address.
Oh my goodness.
But I got the custom elements, which I've used them, and I've got a couple spares just in case the ones I'm currently using ever fade out to the point.
That's good, yeah.
So yeah, but I use the parts in there. It adds a bit more realism to what I'm doing. And I like it. I like how it sets things up.
Yeah, I mean, because there's the Father Leopold, I think, says the Mass, and now there's a Father John hears confession.
I haven't seen that one yet. I've heard of it, but I have not seen it yet.
I saw it in a catalog last night. It's the old-fashioned big wooden booth even.
See, I wouldn't mind seeing one of those in person.
Yeah.
I'm not really much of a traditionalist in any stretch of the imagination, but I do like some of the more classic ideas that we've kind of gotten away from over the generations.
Yeah. And
would like to see a little bit of a return to that, just because there's a certain beauty that we otherwise miss in today's church.
Absolutely. And I had gone to confession recently myself, and I actually went in the historic church, which is much more traditional. It's currently being used by an ordinariate of the chair of St. Peter Parish.
I'm saying that 3 times fast.
I know, right? I can never quite get it. But unfortunately, they didn't use the confessionals, which are like small broom closets currently. But we basically met in a large broom closet. I mean, they're still in repurposing, the historic church wasn't used for a long time. And so they're doing some remodeling, but I guess they were going for the more open space because even though we were wearing masks, this
COVID has thrown a wrinkle in a lot of things, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's rewind this a minute and start at the beginning here. What were some of your first memories of Legos?
Growing up, it was a common toy. It was like one of the first major toys that I had growing up. As I got older, just started expanding my collection a bit through Christmas gifts and stuff like that. The church kind of took off from that time frame where I'd start building these rudimentary buildings, and they'd eventually start turning into churches, and they'd start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And back when we were living in Flushing, which is about half hour south of where I'm currently at, there's a charismatic prayer community down that way called Mount Zion. And I actually did my first public display with them. So that kind of took this childhood idea and turned it into something a little bit bigger. In 2003, I started doing the Christmas display at what we were known as St. Helens back in the day. We're currently called Christ the Good Shepherd. That is when when it really kind of took off for season 4 onward. And that's a display, that's my longest running display that I do. I actually build these, to put it in perspective, these churches that I build, the project, takes up most of a kitchen table.
Wow.
And it's kind of hard to put into words just exactly how big and how heavy these things get.
I was going to ask, how do you support it? How do you move it? Because the base can't just be, the big plates. It's got to be more than just that.
The project itself is built and sets on a plywood base that is about an inch or two, about an inch or two bigger than the actual project itself. I think the dimensions on the board are like 48 by 26, and the project will easily take up 47 by 25 comfortably.
Wow.
With a height of about 23 inches or taller, depending on how big of a bell tower I put on it. and as of this particular video, I'm like at the 75% point of building my 22nd project in a row.
That's crazy. So is it one a year when you say?
One a year.
Okay.
And then what I'll do is I'll take, under normal circumstances, I will take it on the road with the Christmas display being the final display that I do.
Okay.
That will stay at the church for several weeks, and when it comes home from that, I tear it down over the course of a couple of days, and then I start the process all over again, usually in February and March. So, and this one's taken me a bit longer than normal. I started work on this February 2nd, I think is when I started posting pictures. And it's just been a slow process. I've had to order a lot of extra parts this year because of the way the design calls for it. I've had some kindness from a lot of my fans who have donated some money to help support my work. That's why I'm able to do that. That's why I'm able to add the new parts in there through the kindness of others. I've got a statue of St. Joseph this year that I did not have last year. I've got a lot of interesting little details that make the project stand out.
Right. And if somebody wanted to support the project, how do they do that?
They can just go up onto my Twitter feed, KCWZM, or the Lego Church Project Facebook page, and just shoot me a message, and I can send them the details on that.
Okay. I mean, you said at one point that the design just demanded the new parts. So how do you come up with the new design? And do you like sketch it? Do you do a mock-up?
By the time I'm starting to build, number one, I never know where the story is going to take me until I actually sit down with the bricks. I can have 1,001 ideas, and I can only use 10 of those sometimes.
Right.
But usually by the time I'm done with the first half of the project, I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to take things. And then I can judge to see, do I have enough parts to actually pull off my ideas? Some stuff I can get away with using what I have on hand.
Right.
But in this particular case, the problem that I ran into is I didn't have enough of some of the transparent pieces, like the transparent reds and blues that I've been using a lot of. And also a couple of the window panels that I'm using this year. I didn't account when I was making the design. I didn't account for some of the ones I'd need later. Normally, I would have been a little bit better about that, so I kind of got a little careless, got a little carried away with some of the designs. And actually, I'm not doing anything too outrageous if you've seen the last couple of years of my work. But I think this one is definitely going to be kind of interesting in terms of what I'm doing with it, and a lot of the stuff I've added. I've added a lot more pieces than I have in the past, which is, it's good, but it also makes that challenge because every year I'm trying to come up with something new. Right. But at the same time, that has a reflection of some of the previous years that I've built. So, but I think I love how season 22 is turning out, even though it's a slow build. I just worked on a couple sections this morning, in fact. And people don't realize that there's a lot of work that goes into this. There are some times where I'm making sub-assemblies. If you ever look at the Lego instructions, they'll have sections where you have pieces that you actually have to build first and then add them to the finished model. Like little shaded blocks sometimes. Yeah. Stuff, yeah. And this particular project has had more of that than anything else, where I'm sitting, not building on the project, but rather I'm building on the side of it to get the segments in. Yeah. I've got like 12 columns on either side that had to be built by hand. They had to be built first, then put in. Same with the window assemblies. It's just stuff like that, but it's a lot of fun, but it can be very slow going. And today's work was building the cross beams for the roof grid, which basically ties everything together. It's one of the most nerve-wracking parts of it, next to putting the lights in. And if I thought building the ones for the lower half were fun, right? In this case, some people may not realize that part of why you probably build the sub-assemblies is to make sure everything's tight and really put together before you put in that piece. Well, what I found out with last year in the season before, I started changing the way I do the roof grid. Before, I was using just solid brick, but switching down to those thin Lego plates, you layer those plates together like a sandwich, and you can make just about any kind of structure you want with it. But what I found is I built a custom little jig that, with all the markings and measurements on it, which who knew that this old house would come in handy with Lego creations? Yeah, I have to admit, I have done it before myself. Yes. I think between that and New Yankee Workshop, I learned a couple of little things. But no, it makes the process go a little bit smoother because you have your measurements all set out. So you're not trying to guess the measurements, get everything pre-built, and then just attach it in. Once the longer beams are set in, which I worked on yesterday, that took a couple hours to get all 4 of the long beams in place, because you've got different sections that have to tie in together. Yeah. It's a balancing act between what is artistic and what is structural. Right. Because the thing has to be able to move. You have to be able to physically take this and move it from one section to another. And it is, by this point, it is fairly heavy to move around. In the start, you can spin the board around easily enough instead of one spot. No, not much longer. I know when I taught kids, one of the things that was important, now you're working by yourself, some people may not realize, this here would be called a 1x6. Yeah. And this little guy over here is a non-locking bushing. Yeah. There's so many, and this is the large one. There's a smaller one than this. Mm-hmm. And knowing that terminology makes a difference in being able to work with other people, that common language. So even you have to know it because you have to be able to order parts. Yeah, you have to know specifically what you're looking for. You may not necessarily know what the actual official Lego name is, or even the part name that would be listed up on say Bricklink or Brick Owl. Those are the 2 common resale sites. Okay. But you know the shape of it. You know what the dimensions are in terms of the studs. Those little dots on there are referred to as studs, and that's where a lot of the measurements, you get your 1x6. That's 1 brick high, 6 studs long. Yeah. A full brick would be like a 2x. or whatever, like the 2x4 bricks that are common. Those, I use a lot of those inside the project. And the variety of the parts that I use, I'm using like 1x1 transparent round plates, which are like the micro ones.
Yeah.
Almost about the size of that bushing, if not a little bit smaller than that.
Yeah, and then you've got in your little translucent 1x, you've got the cone shape
Yeah.
as opposed to the barrel shape.
The cylinder shaped.
Yeah.
I use those as candle holders. Or I also use them as part of the decorative railings on the upper half where the balcony sections are. And the balcony sections alone are separate pieces that are just dropped into place, because you want a little bit of flexibility. You don't want them like to be totally like tied in, because you need to have a little bit. Lego has a little bit of give to it, particularly when you're building bigger structures. So you need to have a little bit of creative movement, just in case things don't want to be nice.
Right.
I could tell you a horror story when I used to do. Up until about season 5 was my last attempt at a full dome. Season 6 onward, I started transitioning from doing these big, huge dome roofs to the flat roofs that I'm more commonly known for now. The problem is that after a while, the taller that I built the domes, you started getting a rotation in the bricks. To the point where on season 6, all heck broke loose, because I'm trying to get the left side and the right side lined up. And there's a difference of about a ½ inch between the two sides.
Wow.
I could not line it up to save my tail feathers at that point. So I literally, because I tried to flex it, tried to do it, and I ended up destroying the roof.
Yeah.
I had to rebuild it. And at that point, if you ever see the photos on my season 6 project, I literally chopped off top of it and put a plate in and started figuring out, I need to redesign this. So over the course of several years, it took several seasons to do, but the current roof works for what I need it for.
Yeah, yeah.
Just the crazy things of the Lego Church project.
I mean, well, it's true in life, and one of the things kids tend to learn decently early on in Legos, but some of them don't learn it. Circle is not a strong shape. Your triangle is going to be your strongest shape.
Yeah.
But then it really makes you wonder at the churches that do have those big domes. How did people used to do it with all the heavy masonry work and all that they did? Kind of blows your mind.
Well, and the fact is that a lot of those early churches eventually had problems where they had to come in and put additional iron and such to brace things up. And the fact that a lot of these classic churches are still standing despite the fact of where they were built, like in earthquake zones, that's a testament to the builders.
Yeah.
And you just don't see that very much anymore.
No.
You really don't.
Tell us a little bit more about the ministry of the Lego Church project then, and the impact that it has.
The ministry is very simple. I have a mild form of cerebral palsy. I have mobility issues. I have sometimes my hand-eye coordination isn't as it should be. And what I have found is that God has used my talents in this rather interesting and very creative way. So I'm a firm believer that God can use your talents no matter what you're facing with. To a parent that may have a child that has some kind of disability, that will give them hope that God can still use their child's gifts in an amazing way, and to encourage others to explore their own talents. What is God calling them to do? For me, it's building these massive churches.
I mean, so when you do the tour, you're sitting next to, you sit next to the project. I've seen in pictures.
Yes.
Is that what you normally do, and interact with people as they come by and look at it? Is that like after mass, or do you have like a special exhibition? How does that?
If I'm doing a holiday bazaar, I'll set up for like 6 hours, and I'll be sitting there. I'll interact with the people that come by. Parish displays. What I usually do is I'll usually set up, and I'll be there before and after mass.
Okay.
Sometimes people want to talk a little bit afterwards, And it gives them a chance to ask any questions like, well, how did you do that? And then the surprise on their face when they realize, oh, he's got a disability. You don't look like you have a disability. Not all disabilities are visible. If you were to see me walk, you could probably tell I had challenges. But most people assume that because of the weight. And yeah, the weight is a factor. But at the same time, though, I've got balance issues. I've fallen too many times over the years to prove it.
Right. Which is a testament then that you do such delicate work.
Yeah, and I'm not formally trained in anything.
Right. Wow.
I'm not an architect. My math skills are basic, if that. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I was just commenting on this on social media the other day. The project has a lot of math to it because you have to know measurements. You have to know how high something's going to be, balancing things out. I try and keep the rough dimensions between the lower half and the upper half kind of similar. It's not exactly perfect just because of the way the upper half is structured with that entire roof grid adding to things. Mm-hmm. But I try and keep things as balanced as I can in terms of the overall design. I don't want things looking too wonky.
Right.
So it does require a little bit more thought and process. And sometimes if my brain's not working right, just take a little bit extra time.
Which should be an encouragement to other kids out there that struggle with math or, different learning challenges, that there is a way that you just need to figure out. And I run into this all the time. Sorry, I tutor homeschool students, and often, not always, but often, I'll get the kid who just can't sit there with the book and get it. But normally there's like a little key I can find. And if I can find that key, they can make it work. And they can learn whatever it is that they need to learn, and they succeed. But finding out exactly what that key is pretty darn exciting when you're there for that moment.
Yeah.
And they're like, And sometimes it can be so simple. There's some kids I say, like, have you ever tried colored pens? And they just stare at you and they go home and redo their entire notebook, and suddenly their math makes sense.
Well, sometimes the way that I see it when I'm working on the project is sometimes the solution to a problem is often the most simple.
Right.
And in case in point, today I built these long beams I was talking about, and I made a mistake. I did not count I made this custom jig, but I made it the wrong length.
Oh, no.
So it's like, okay, am I going to have to completely redo these? Oh no, I can just, number one, make the jig the exact length, line things up as I had it, and then just work on the end pieces and rebuild those. So I don't have to tear everything apart, because I probably spent about an hour at that point getting those pieces together.
I mean, that's a good lesson in humility that comes your way too, though, right?
This entire project this season has been a lesson in that. It has been a lesson in patience. It has been the perfect Lent, because it forces you to slow down just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's the lesson that I've been getting on this, because normally I'd be done by now.
Oh, wow.
Last year, but then again, last year though, for season 21, I didn't have to put in very many bricklink orders. This year I put in like 4 or 5 midway through the build. The bricklink vendors who are probably going to be watching this, oh yes, thank you. But I've run into a lot of interesting people over the years. I've been able to take part in a lot of interesting things. The Disability Awareness Conference back during season 19, Stumbling Towards Sainthood was instrumental. That blog was instrumental in helping that. When I made a mention about wanting to be part of it, and she just got that Twitter bandwagon going and got the diocese's attention to that. I have to give a shout out to that, because that's still one of my proudest moments, to be able to, number one, bring the project out there, which is about disability. Mm-hmm. I think within the church, I think that it is often overlooked, not intentionally. I just think that sometimes we get so caught up that we don't realize that not everyone is in the same place, and that we got to take people where they're at versus where we think they should be at.
And I know this year, I can't speak to previous seasons because I'm a new fan, but I know this year you're trying to do some inclusion with including service animals.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of interesting. The last several years, I've been trying to do more with that. to include wheelchairs. When Lego came out with their wheelchairs, I got excited, but before that, I ended up building my own custom power chair that I've been using.
Wow.
And it's actually based on a young woman who sometimes comes to our church named Kate. She's got cerebral palsy as well. And the story goes that I was sitting in choir, saw her and her mother sitting there, and I'm like wondering, Lego just announced they were going to do the wheelchairs, like, could I build my own power chair? And I spent like a couple hours just with messing with just pieces that I had on hand from some sets that I bought for whatever reason, and it worked. And ever since then, I've used that chair inside the project, and that's kind of where things took off. As the wheelchairs became more available, I picked up a couple for myself to include in the project. Over the off season, I picked up like some kind of police set or something, and saw a German Shepherd there. They are commonly used as service animals. And so, yeah, I posted some feedback on social media just because I like to try and keep things as accurate as I can. I do have some really goofy things inside the project, but when it comes to certain things, you want to try and be as accurate as you can within reasons and within the limits of Lego.
And you have an advantage there because you're building a new church every year, so you can make accommodations in your pews for people in wheelchairs. But, churches can't do that as easily, but maybe they're going to look at what you're doing and how you're accommodating people. I know with people with autism, like you might see them with the big headphones on during and what people don't realize, I know our church, they added folding like individual chairs behind the pews so that seniors who have a difficulty with a pew could sit in the back, and it says that they're reserved for seniors, where a lot of times people with different sensory processing disorders or digestive disorders really need those chairs so they can get up and leave for a quiet space or leave to run to the bathroom quick. And just, I think your project inspires, I'm guessing, I haven't seen it in person, but might have people trying to think of, okay, how do we accommodate people? We say we include them, but saying hi isn't the same as making a space for them.
Well, I think for me personally, I think it's nice to see when churches do make accommodations. Our church in particular, Christ the Good Shepherd, we had some major renovation. We had a disaster with like the wall or something in the basement started having issues. And what they did was at that time, they decided to go ahead, and since they were going to be working the area anyway, they took out a couple steps and put a small cement ramp in, which made it easier for wheelchair people to come in. Many years ago, they modified one of the office spaces inside the church and expanded the bathroom to make it more accessible, which I thought was a nice little touch. Sometimes it's those small things, but I think it starts with the attitude. I think attitude plays a much bigger role in that. This mindset, you're right. It's like on one hand, we try and be inclusive, but we try and put limits as to what that inclusiveness is about. And we can't have this one size fits all kind of policy when it comes to people. Not everyone is in the same place, and there are a lot of people with multiple types of challenges, including not just the visible ones.
Right.
You see the wheel.
Difficulty to see them.
Yeah, and that's why you can't really pass judgment on everyone that you meet, because you don't know what they're struggling with.
Right.
People see me. They see me walking around kind of awkward sometimes, and like I said, I'm a big guy. I admit it. But they don't realize that I've had multiple falls. Some of them due to bike accidents where parts have broken on me.
Oh no.
I've got the broken crankshaft to prove it.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't the pedal that broke, it was actually the solid metal crankshaft actually snapped on me.
Wow.
I've got mobility issues, partially because of the fact that I've taken too many falls over the years. And my legs don't like to behave themselves. Now, you wouldn't know it by the way I ride my trike, but at the same time though, there are limitations with that too. My balance is kind of like, I'm like not stable otherwise.
Right.
So, but it's that understanding that people, we're quick to pass judgment, but at the same time, we're not quick to listen or understand or take the time to understand what someone's challenges are and how they interact with the world through that lens.
Right. I think that's one of the strengths of your project, is because people see it, they're drawn to it because it's Lego and it's kind of novel, and they might come over and then they start talking to you, or they see like, hey, why is that set up that way? And maybe do they interact with you in that way at all? Or
sometimes I've had people ask me questions about like, why do I have that certain thing in there? And it's good. It's a good conversation piece. It's a good chance to give education to what's going on. I just recorded a podcast not long ago, and we brought up the issue of disability from the standpoint of, well, this is what I live with.
I'm just curious, have you worked at all with, let me see if I can get it in order, the National Catholic Partnership for the Disability?
I have not. I'm basically, to borrow the phrase, I'm a lone wolf.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that it could be possibly a good match.
If there was an opportunity to do so, I would be more than happy to work with them. I sometimes kind of consider myself an underutilized talent.
Yeah.
But just because of the fact that people see the project, they see the unique nature of it. I mean, you walk into a room, and considering how big this thing is,
right?
We're talking 47 inches long. That's not small by any stretch. Exactly. With a full interior. They see the outside of the church, and then you tell them to, well, look inside, because that's part of the story. But they don't get to take the time or given the chance to properly learn what the real story behind it. What drives me every year to do this, because this is an epic undertaking.
Yeah.
This can be even for me, this can be very overwhelming. There are many times where I've had to take a step back for a day or two just to let my mind kind of relax a bit. Because it's like, if you're in a rush to try and get things done, you're going to make a mistake. And for someone like me who has that kind of issue where you want to go full throttle, you got to slow it down just a little bit, because otherwise you can't get anything done. Because sometimes you're going to have to go back over and fix the mistakes you made because you got careless.
Yeah. So why I bring up the National Catholic Partnership on Disability is people don't know, but like if you may have like an autistic student who needs to take religious education classes or wants to participate in children's liturgy of the word, and exactly what does that look like? What are some things that you might need to be prepared for? And this is a clearinghouse for that information in America. Like, it exists, but people don't know it's there. Or even if somebody has a mental health issue, sometimes it's something so simple, but like you say, you're not going to think about it or recognize it right away just because it's not in your experience.
Exactly.
And you could be a perfect partnership fit, because maybe they would give you literature or help you develop your own literature to hand out.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, I'm definitely on board.
Yeah.
If one of the groups wants to contact me, drop an email to me, drop a message. I'd be more than happy to talk with them. I mean, within the last couple of years, my goal has been to expand the ministry a bit. Mm-hmm. The project is part of what I do. Right. Being able to talk about what I do and the reasons behind it has become very important for me. Last year during the pandemic, I couldn't do any major public displays.
Right.
My project is like I took all the pictures I needed, but at the same time though, very few people got to see the project in person. And that's made me wonder, well, what can I be doing? Last year I had the chance to go on several different podcasts and radio programs, which has been nice.
Yeah.
Got to talk about disability awareness, ministering to those with disability on Trent Horn's program.
Oh, great.
Almost a year ago now.
Wow.
Which I thought was a lot of fun for me, but very different, because it was one of those rare times where the project was not the focus of why I was on the show. It was because I was on the show, but that was not the main goal of it, which for me was fine. I love talking about even just disability and how it relates to me. As I said, I've had my own share of challenges. There are days when things go very smoothly and days when not so good.
So we've talked about Lego in general, your Lego project, and disability awareness. And let's go back to where we started with those questions. Just how has the Lego project and the ministry affected your faith and your faith journey?
It is, for me, I have an appreciation for the Mass. One of the biggest comments I get anytime I do a display is the church is full of people. The project is about prayer when you boil it down to it. It is a prayer for our parishes, a prayer for those who have fallen away from the church for whatever reason. The reasons as to why are not so much important is the fact that they're not at Mass. Right. Some people don't take the time to make the Mass a priority. And as things start to get back to some kind of normal, that's going to be even more important than before. Our parishes were struggling beforehand. This pandemic certainly didn't do them any favors. And I'm not talking about from a monetary standpoint. I'm talking about from a spiritual and personal standpoint. Our parish communities are often overlooked, and we have a chance to change that. So the project, with all the people there, is a reminder of where things should be at. I often say it's not a reflection of the past, but a reflection of where things should be in our lives. And certainly, the project gives me the chance to pray on that, the praying at the bricks, as I often say. Many times where I'm covering the issues that are troubling my heart, I'm spending it taking my hands and putting that into a physical sense. And it can be very rewarding from the standpoint that I may not solve the world's problems, but at least I know that I'm praying about them.
Right, absolutely. It's kind of like, is it Benedictine, work with your hands as much? Yeah, pray with your hands. So, sorry, I'm losing the quotes there.
That's okay.
But, like the monks who make jam, or there's monks that train dogs.
Yeah.
They make fruitcake, or, whatever. They have some little mission that they can, where their hands are doing something, but it's their prayer, that's the work of their hands that's showing the glory of God. And just, it's another way of praying. It's not just mental prayer. It's not just contemplation. And I don't mean to use the word just, but there's also the prayer that you can do when you just give yourself over to your work that is the work in the vineyard.
Well, I'm telling the story that God wants me to tell. I'm creating a snapshot of parish life, and it could be any parish.
Right. Yeah.
The designs that I'm building are my own design, inspired by the places I've seen or I've been to, but they're all my own design. And I think that's one of the other things that catches people off guard when I start talking about it. As I said, I'm not a formally trained architect, and I never know where the story is going to go until I literally sit down with the bricks. There's a multi-step process to doing the layout. And within that, I can get an idea of, okay, I should do things this way. Okay, Lord, where are you taking me? And I've had those moments where things just kind of turn out even better than I could expect.
Right.
And that's a certain beauty. I think that goes along with my own core belief is when you walk into a church, you want to be inspired. You want to see the history coming through the bricks. One of the things I've been reflecting upon lately as I've been building is the bricks that I use some of them are dinged up. Some of them have seen a lot of wear, a lot of use over the years. I don't want a church that is pristine. I don't want a building that is 100% perfect, because I want that building to look like it's been there a while.
Wow.
Much like some of the greatest churches that we've seen, they've stood the test of time.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of a strange kind of little mix in terms of my mindset, but at the same time, though, I'm doing something rather amazing.
Yeah.
And I've been very appreciative and very thankful to those who have followed me over the years, who are often wondering, well, what is he going to do next?
It's kind of interesting because I have these two images above me, and one is a very traditional icon, and an icon is a specific snapshot of that saint.
Yeah.
It has a specific name, and that's kind of like you said, it's a snapshot in time. Although icons are very much, and they're written in prayer, like you're building in prayer.
Yeah.
they normally have a very particular format and they're continually recreated. Whereas this one, if you can see, is Saint Kateri. It was done by an artist up in New York. I was lucky enough to visit the National Shrine for Saint Kateri on the weekend. Their raffle was drawn and I entered quick and swiped the prize. It's actually a fairly costly piece of art, but you can see how the image started out, just loosely in color. And I think he maybe didn't have Saint Kateri in mind, and it doesn't completely come through on the camera, but there's actually like a horse into the background.
I can see it actually.
Which is really cool. And then he pulled out the Saint Kateri image as well. So that's an instance of, where you start something, you think you know where you're going, and it ends up even better. And yet they're both icons, just in different ways. And so I see, that's where I'm going. I see really the beauty of your project. You're intending to show the inclusiveness and the beauty of the Mass as it could be in our church, rich in history, our faith that has continued near the ancient faith. And you're just showcasing it, how we live it out today, or could live it out today. And I love that you're extending that invitation to people right now. Come back to the Mass.
Yeah.
For the pandemic, you were scared, but welcome back.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand that some people are struggling with a lot of things within the church. It's not very easy to follow this path, as we've certainly learned. There are certain lessons that are very hard to accept in this current age. But at the same time, it is also kind of trying to find the right kind of term. It's kind of an amazing feeling, though, even though that we have this certain rigid structure, it makes things easier for us because we know what is right, we know what may not be right, and for whatever issues we are struggling with, we know that we can come before God and we can have that discussion with Him to work things out within our own hearts.
Yeah, in secular Franciscanism, we always talk about that. We have the structure, but structure gives you freedom.
Yeah.
Because we know what those boundaries are, and so now we're free to explore in between them, kind of. So yeah, and like you say, get that dialogue going, and of course the Lego project is a great way to get that dialogue started in any parish. So God bless you for your work.
Thank you so much.
This has been a great interview. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I love anytime I have a chance to share my story with others.
Yeah.
Especially with this current age of internet and these podcasts, I'm always looking forward to share the story with others.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about what I do, but why I do it.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Well, thank you. Do you want to lead us in a little closing prayer then?
Let's see what I can come up with. Lord God, my Father, we are thankful for the opportunities that you give us. We are grateful for, even through our challenges, of what we're able to overcome. And we pray for those for today, for those who are struggling, not just with their faith, but with various health issues and whatnot. And we know that you will help us out in our time of need. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And go ahead and sign off, and God bless. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Bye.